So, good morning everyone, and thank you very much to the organizer team, and it's nice to be here again between old friends and new ones. I will talk now about Libya and about the colonization, the Italian colonization under Mussolini time in Libya. We're talking about Mussolini colonizing Libya, even if the colonization started fairly before Mussolini. We can say that around 1910. Already Italy was going for Africa and this kind of European scrambling for Africa. But it is under Mussolini, so starting from 1930s around, that he promoted the colonization of the coastal area of Africa to avoid the overpopulation and the Arbeitslosigkeit. Now it's coming the German question on the back.
Unemployment.
Unemployment, thank you, in Italy. That's why on the coastal of Tripolitania and Cyrenaica, in 1934, the first 4 rural settlements were built, and under Italo Balbo, it was planned a big mass colonization of the country. So 5 rounds of mass colonization are 20,000 Italians to be transferred for the upcoming 5 years. 1938, the first wave of Italians left Italy to reach the coastal of Tripolitania and Cyrenaica. 39, the second wave. 1940, it was planned, and they were already building new settlements, but before all the outbreaking of the war, it was not possible to complete the program. Between 1934 and 1940, there were 24 rural settlements completely built and working on the coastal area of Libya. Parallel to this, a program for colonization for the Libyan family was started in 1938, so that several new settlements were built for the Libyan family. Was it true? No. Actually, it was just a kind of big propaganda idea, because the Libyan family were starting getting worried about the fact that the Italians were taking all the lands to transplantate their own family. That's why in the press of the time we have lots of pictures with Italo Balbo welcoming the Libyan family, shaking hands, giving the keys, and you can see from the graphic that they were really promoting this new Libyan settlements. They were built, they were put in scene with camels. You don't have this kind of camels along the seaside in Libya. This is a figure image, and propagated through the press. Still, many of them never really get into use, but they are still exist. So how was it working? Well, the Italians were taking out the best plots of land from the Libyans, dividing them into smaller plots. One family was put on the plot, and more or less in the middle of this area they were creating the rural settlement, which was actually more a logistic center, because no one was living in the center, but probably the doctor or the teacher. All the families were scattered all over the land to reinforce the attachment to the land, so that they had no distraction and they were forced just to work. Here was more or less the same village in the middle, and then you can see the small little houses around. Well, the typology adopted to build these 28 rural settlements was more or less these ones. You can see that the main characteristic is this kind of void, this defining the piazza in the middle. This is for sure because it was a kind of answer to the local town planning requirement, so a kind of functional archetype. The feeling home. Families were coming from Italy. Many of them had no idea they were really going to Africa. Where is it Africa, that there is so much sand? And so they needed a kind of identification process, so this is a new Heimat. And the piazza was building the theater for the fascist power, used for the press. So you can see some example here. This is Tigrinna, one of the very first which was realized, where you see that the piazza, the void, is delimited just by a wall. It was just important to have this interior contraposed to the exterior. to enclose the new families. This is another Baracca, also in Cyrenaica, and you can see that here the piazza is defined by a different path on the floor. So the buildings that were there were probably not enough to enclose completely the space, so they just put a different flooring pattern. In this case, Bianchi, you have the example that, of the arcades used to connect building. Again, no other function but one of giving a perimeter, a finis, a delimitis. Here another example. Here you have a building not functional, one in the middle, again to force you to enter into this enclosed space. Here you have also the, I think it's very topical, the use and the position of the church. The church is absolutely axial and in the middle of the square. So thinking back about the concept of giving the colonies and giving the families a new feeling of home, a new identity, a new connection with a new heimat. Remember, in the past one, the church was for sure much more stronger than the new fascist party. That's why the house for the fascist party, the Casa del Fascio, we see in Italian, it is in one of those buildings, but it was not important because the family needed actually the church to identify itself, much more than the party. And here is, in my opinion, very nice picture, because if you compare the surrounding, which is just the emptiness with a small family, and the tower of the church, here you have the feeling that this tower was really a light tower for all the family sitting around. Maddalena, Cyrenaica. Here again you have the Berta, which is also kind of a very strong impact picture in my opinion, because you have this main alley driving the family directly to the church. Axial, and a little bit higher, but was built higher than the other buildings, so that it was just impossible to miss it. So the square, we thought the square as the place to feel at home, to have this new identity, but on the other hand, the square as the theater for the fascist party. It was used by the press. Here you have, for example, Italo Balbo and our former king, Vittorio Emanuele, walking through in a military parade, and where else if not in the main square of the villages. All the colonies or the families were also gathering in the square for any kind of festivities. Here in this case you have some cows, was one of these agrarian festivities, very important to gather the family and to give them the feeling of being part of a new community. And here you can see probably there is the big face of Mussolini attached on the pillars. So festivity all together for the agricultural empowerment of Libya and under the name of Mussolini in the square. So this is more or less the state of the art I'm starting now for the research of MODSCAPE. First of all, there is this mapping of the process. So trying to map how these settlements were realized in the sense of planned and really implemented. For my PhD and for the following publication, I have some books with me if you want to have a look afterwards. I researched many archives in Italy and abroad to be able to map back the plans and the process of designing those centers. So I was able to find the original plans, some sketches, and many photos from the time of the implementation. My last trip to Libya, sadly, was 2009, where I was able to track back actually all those villages, documenting them by picture and sketches. So here you have again the center of Jola with the villages which is still existing more or less. You have the old church and how it was in 2009. And here how it was, I just found this picture in the press, was talking about the revolution and was a picture of 2012. I assumed that from the floor situation that part of the ceiling was just collapsed down. What I did also during the survey were to map which buildings were still existing and which not. The church, this very important church, was demolished. On the other side, the house of the fascist party, that is this building here, is still completely untouched on its place and is now used for different meanings. I remember it was the house for the teacher for the close by school. The second very important things that I will try to do will be to map the impact of this colonization on the territory. Here you see Deda, is in red, was one of the 1934 first settlement. If you see, if you have a look at Piazza, and Deda was 1934, Battisti, Luigi di Savoia too, and Battisti 1938. If you look at the surface of the urban surface of Beda and Baida today, you see how big it is. So I am going down until searching for the original core of the Italian colonization. So this was the first settlement with the church again that you can see here, the house for the fascist party, the municipality, and here some additional building. This tract of building was demolished to give place to this street, but the church and this other building are still existing. Beda was enlarged in 1938, and so other buildings from this side were also realized. Those you have it still now. So this was the original place, 1938, with the street in the middle, and this is how it looked at 2009. So the church was a supermarket. They closed those row of buildings were still existing. And this is a wonderful picture because it shows you how the Italian modernity was not maybe nice enough. And so you see here how the municipality building was kind of changing a little bit to make it more nice, and it was the seat of the police, so with round arches. But, well, still in use. Yes, we saw a lot of architecture, a lot of town planning, and I'm asking myself, where is the people now? So I'm trying to track back all the Italian, or many of the Italians who were taking part in this colonization process. At the moment, I contacted the AIL, which is the organization of the former Italians living in Libya. They spread a kind of request, I wrote them, and many people just answered me. So that I am, after the conference, I will travel here around Milano to meet some of them. Of course, considering that at the beginning of the colonization, the kids were 6 or 7, now they are already 85, 86, 88. So if I am lucky, they're still alive. Still, these kids, during the war, were taken apart and taken away from Libya and sent back to Italy. So they didn't really spend so much time during the fascist time in Libya, but they returned afterwards. And I know that, for example, one woman has some notes from her father and some diaries and pictures, and she's quite willing to give me these things. So I hope it will be possible to track back also how was people living, or which were the dependencies and independencies from the house to the score and so on. So this, for example, one picture, this is this typical with the X on the head. It was me, you can see here. This was me at the school. And here are some notes. The teacher was Ottavio Balsamo, a name which is coming and returning by many of the people I was talking with. Big problem. I'm talking just with the Italian. What about the Libyans? This is, of course, for me as an Italian, and taking aware of this post-colonial discourse, it's really a huge problem. And so I spread via Facebook some notes with Libyans, and I am now in contact with 2 families in Tripoli, and I really hope that we would be willing to cooperate, answering a couple of questions, just to give a little bit of balance to this post-research and, well, trying to avoid this post-colonial say, perspective on all these facts. Thank you very much.